Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
My name is Viola Ford Fletcher. I'm the daughter of Lucinda Ellis and John Wesley Ford of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm the sister of Hughes Van Ellis, who is also here today. I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. 2 weeks ago, I celebrated my 107th birthday. Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921.
Viola Ford Fletcher has passed away. This morning's briefing is not going to be an obituary for her, and while we are certainly going to pay honor to this grand lady, it's not going to be your typical tribute. I'd rather speak about the significance of what this woman stood for and how she came to prominence in the first place. The go-to lie that anti-black racists love to hide behind as their excuse for opposing reparations is, it happened so long ago. There's no one alive today who was a slave. Well, when it comes to people like Viola Fletcher, you can't play that game with the Tulsa Race Massacre, because there are survivors alive today. But what did the courts say when these people presented their case? They said, well, it happened a long time ago. It just goes to show, these white supremacists do not deal in good faith, and only a fool takes them at their word. If they weren't saying, well, no one alive today was a victim of such and such, then they would be saying, well, it happened a long time ago, so even if you were a victim, it was so long ago. These same racists say things like redlining and such were outlawed in the 60s. So these things don't affect black people. They haven't affected black people in generations. Black people being unable to access real estate like everyone else, well, that's just black people's own fault, because the banks aren't redlining, except that they are. In what was pretty much the one and only good thing the Biden administration did, the DOJ exposed that there have been banks from coast to coast engaged in open, blatant, targeted redlining of black neighborhoods and black loan applicants. So no, redlining isn't some relic of the past. It's something that never stopped and continues all the way to the present. But white society denies it. They have to. And whenever you present the facts to them, rather than say, oh, this is still going on, redlining is still happening, well, this is an injustice. I mean, this is a relic of the Jim Crow past. We got to get rid of it. Black people are being held back. I mean, we didn't know, but now we do, so we need some changes, right? That's not what they do. Instead, they immediately try to change the subject. That's the only change they want to make. But the truth isn't buried so easily. Viola Fletcher, along with the last surviving members of the Tulsa Race Massacre, went before the entire world and demanded what they were due. This woman was already over 100 years old at that point. A lot of other folks, most others in fact, would be in retirement or at the very least saying, I can't take up any more fights at my age, but not her. She was determined to fight until her dying breath. The descendants and the sympathizers with these racist white murderers, they're the very people we're having to contend with today. When they say, y'all need to forget about all that, what they're saying is you need to forget about the crimes that we committed and the punishment that we earned. Well, we're not going to forget about either one. The demented math that these anti-black racists use is that, in their minds, they're running out some sort of clock. That's how they see it. Well, if we just make sure that we stonewall these black people long enough, well, sooner or later, time is going to run out for them. That's what they think. Because they declare, well, we're putting a statute of limitations on these things. In their minds, they think that we're going to abide by that. But we won't. The old black people who were the original victims of these anti-black crimes, well, those people will die out, and the young ones will eventually forget. That's what they think. And in time, all of these crimes white supremacy committed against foundational black Americans will be forgotten, along with white supremacy's undeserved advantages that were built upon these forgotten crimes. Except we're not letting that happen. We're not letting them memory hold it, and we're not letting them proclaim that they're just going to bestow innocence on themselves and say, well, we say that it was so long ago, so it's a dead issue. We're not going along with it. Miss Viola Ford Fletcher didn't care how much time had passed. Her parents were gone, her siblings, virtually everyone she had ever known. A century had passed. But she was still pursuing justice, because evil can't just be disapproved of, you also have to fight it too. Carolyn Donham, whose lies led to the torture and murder of Emmett Till, was allowed to remain free, and whenever the white authorities claimed that they needed additional evidence, well, we just can't move forward without this or that, whenever black people brought them that evidence that they claimed that they needed, they would then just say that they needed something else, something more, or that now the very evidence that they wanted was no longer sufficient. Do not ever let these racist pieces of trash tell you that this is about statutes of limitation being expired or about perpetrators being dead. The Nazis have been dead since forever, and the Jews are still getting reparations, even in the U.S. where the Holocaust didn't happen. During the Me Too hysteria, all it took was an opportunity to scapegoat some black men, and these white legislators changed laws overnight to extend the statute of limitations. They changed that. And then they prosecuted people under those very brand new laws that they wrote, which was the proof that they already knew in advance who they were going to use those laws against. So this isn't about any of those excuses. They only offer those phony claims when it comes to us. The rest of the time, they can't wait to write some new laws that allow them to do whatever they want to do. Statutes of limitations are never a problem when it's something they want. And perpetrators being dead isn't a problem either. What's going on here is not a matter of law. The law is clear. This is about I'm white and I say so. In any other instance, for any other group, there would be legislators tripping over themselves to author legislation to authorize not only reparations, but to also honor these survivors. We don't have political representation, though. If we did, they would be on it. This is why I get furious thinking about those political backstabbers in California, the so-called Black Assembly Caucus, who laughed in the faces of their own black voters when it came time to vote on a reparations bill, and in many cases, these are black folks who they know, people who they live in the same area with. When these bootlicks to white power mock reparations, they're mocking the lives and the memories of people like Viola Ford Fletcher. Isn't it interesting that the cowards, bootlicks, and sellouts who are always the first to say, but what about black-on-black crime? They're silent at times like this. They would never dare try that when talking about people like Viola Ford Fletcher. When you talk about the survivors of the race massacres or even the remaining activists from the civil rights movement, why is it that these cowards today who are always the first to say, what about black-on-black crime or racism isn't really a problem anymore, how come they're silent all of a sudden? Because they're liars and they know that they're lying. The attorney representing the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre was with Miss Fletcher a few days before she passed. He said, I saw that Mother Fletcher didn't talk like someone who was ready to go. She wasn't done. She was tired because this fight is exhausting, but her spirit was still in it. In 2023, she co-authored a memoir with her grandson titled, Don't Let Them Bury My Story. This woman fought until her dying breath, and through her memoir, she leaves a record of what happened, but also leaves a demand that we not abandon the fight. Don't tell me there's no racism in America. Don't tell me that America isn't a racist country. It's damn sure not a just country. Don't tell me that black people are our own worst enemies either, and don't even think to tell me that white supremacy is not the biggest problem we face. Because for over a century, you have the white media, the government, the courts, and thugs on the street who all banded together to commit a localized genocide, and then they all colluded together for a century now to protect the perpetrators from punishment and to deny the survivors the reparations that they're owed. And they didn't do it based on law. They did it based on white fiat. At this point, Leslie Benningfield Randall is now the only living survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. She also has been continuing the fight. And that being the case, you got these people who are very elderly, and yet their spirit is as fierce as it was in their youth. They have not forgotten who and what they are. They also haven't forgotten who the enemy is. People like Miss Randall and Miss Fletcher are stand-ins for all of us. The justice that they were denied is just another example of the justice we have been denied as a people. And I, for one, don't think it's any kind of coincidence that people like Miss Fletcher or Miss Randall are still alive and still fighting 100+ years later. I don't think that that's some happenstance. I think that that's the hand of the ancestors working and making it very clear this is the fight that they want us to continue. It is no coincidence at all that when we dug in our heels on reparations and made it a major issue, all of a sudden these legislators, they felt like they had to at least pretend as if they were giving a hearing to the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre. They had to pretend as if they were listening to these elders. And make no mistake, that's what people like Viola Fletcher and Leslie Randall are. They are elders. Why? Because they did something for the next generation. That's why. They didn't just sit back and say, well, at this point here, what am I going to be thinking about? Retirement? Some sort of payout? What good would that do me? As far as they were concerned, a great crime had happened, and the perpetrators couldn't be allowed to have either the favorable judgment of history or the idea that they had run out some sort of clock. They made it very clear this task was being handed over to the younger generation to pursue. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Never forget the evil that we are contending against. Never forget the crimes and atrocities that have been committed against us and who it was who committed them. But most importantly, never forget people like Viola Ford Fletcher, individuals of conscience and unwavering spirit who would never stop standing for what's right no matter how old they were or how long the fight took. It will be impossible to bury the story of Viola Fletcher with her, because her story is not just hers alone. It is the story of our entire people, of our entire lineage. Her story is the story of the longest and most significant freedom struggle in the history of the world. Viola Ford Fletcher didn't betray her principles or abandon the fight in life. The people that she cared about, the people who had been wronged and killed, they were not there to speak, so she spoke on their behalf. And that makes her someone worth honoring, and the struggle that she waged worth continuing until it is won.